Welcome back. We'll talk about the president's recent directive and sundry matters now. We're joined by Dr. Ezife, who Edozie is a consultant on national security and counter-terrorism. He's also practices law. He's an author as well. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, looking at that headline as the papers reflected it today, the story was also yesterday while they were speaking in Jaji. And questions came through saying, well, people immediately remembered the president's previous directive on this matter that the army should act. But again, this is the commander-in-chief who's speaking here. And usually when commanders-in-chief give or make certain statements, you expect commensurate response from the army. But in this case, people just ask, wait a minute, how do we relate to this kind of scenario? So for you, you've also have heard and read what he says. How does that come across to you, for instance?
Well, what he's saying flies in the face of reality. At every point when you have all these insecurity issues, that's the same thing you hear. So it makes you wonder, actually it confirms the fact that he has not been doing anything. If he's saying he's giving directives now, so what has he been doing for the past 7 years? He was voted in principally because of his military experience, and people thought he was going to do something about insecurity. And if he's saying this when he has less than a year to go, what has he been doing for the past 7 years? That is the question that comes up.
Okay, but with this, when the CNC says this, and the forces are listening to this, they are trained to take this instruction and run with it. So they can't reason the way regular people reason about this. So shouldn't they be running straight up and addressing this matter headlong without thinking whether or not he said it before?
Well, it remains to be seen. Now that he has said it, let's see what happens in the next week or two. It just doesn't make sense. Whoever wrote that speech is not thinking right, because it just confirms he's not been doing anything.
So maybe to properly contextualize at least that statement that was put out, said that the president pledged that his government would continue to provide the needed support required to wipe out terrorists and insurgents off the face of the earth. So, I mean, what comes before the wiping out is providing the needed support, continue to provide the needed support. And I think one of the operative words is continue to provide the needed support. And I think maybe we can focus on that as well. So there's what the military, I mean, we talk about the military a lot. There's the police primarily, but this is about the military because they were speaking at that event. So what the military does on the field, but the kind of support they get either from the president, from those in authority, those who can make policies. So perhaps from that angle, would you say that there's been enough support needed for them to now do the work they're meant to do on the field? Well,
to begin with, we don't know what kind of support have been given. The stories we've been hearing and seeing on Facebook and you see military people complaining that they don't have enough equipment, and the way they have been losing to all these terrorists each operation. About a week or so ago, they killed about 30 soldiers in Niger State. I mean, how is that possible? If they have the right equipment, they should be able to fend off some of these events. So, he should first of all let us know what it is that he has provided them. And then from that, then we can judge what is needed.
Is that the way it works, that they just publicize what they provided? I mean, wouldn't those who want to take advantage also say, oh, okay, if this is what they have, then this is what we need to do to counter that?
No, not necessarily. I mean, some of them you can disclose, but, if you bought aircrafts, you can tell us you bought aircrafts.
I thought you told us already, Tucano.
Tucano, how many of them? Is Tucano the best you can do? And they're being shot down routinely.
Do you think we can do better?
A training aircraft.
So it would seem like the armed forces are outnumbered and ill-equipped if there are not enough equipment. And if you consider the attack on the Kuje prisons, the report was that 300 terrorists, executed that attack. So even though the army would not like to admit it, this is where we are. Where does that leave the fight against insurgency?
Yeah, they're clearly, don't take my word for it. You've had accounts from even soldiers themselves complaining that they don't have enough to fight. The Kuje thing is really mind-boggling. How terrorists can attack, a place in Abuja for 3 hours. They have not told us why they did not send reinforcement, or what people in the prison did when this thing happened. Who did they call? Why do we not have a quick response team to respond to these kind of things? That's what you should have in an insurgency. You should have a quick response team that you call in when you have things like this. And we're talking about the capital of Nigeria. The terrorists will operate for 3 hours and nothing is done, and they'll leave. It's just embarrassing.
You research on what goes on, security, insurgents in this country. So from your findings, what do you think is going on with all of these attacks across the country?
Well, you have to, the thing about counter-terrorism, you have to, you don't have to react to it. You have to, do something before it actually happens. You have to have a way to obtain relevant information so that you're ready when these things happen, or even do what you have to do to prevent it from happening in the first place. Once you start reacting, it has already happened. It's too late. So information gathering is very crucial in terrorism, in counter-terrorism. You have to have information to prevent these things from happening.
Yeah, so I mean, from the attacks that we've seen in different parts of the country, you must have gleaned a lot from what's happening. So in your analysis, what do you think is happening that perhaps people may not be seeing?
Well, there are four basic, there's several reasons why these things are happening, but you can distill it to four major ones. One is the structure of the country. All these people that are doing this thing in the southeast, in the southwest, and northeast, they're complaining about the structure, the way the country is.
The president says trans-border insurgents. Is it the same thing you're referring to?
No, it's part of it because the government is not doing what it's supposed to do. We're supposed to man our borders. They know these people are coming in from the Sahel region, and just nobody's stopping them. They're just wazing through. Why can't it harkens back to what I'm talking about, the structure? Why can't the federal government, work with the states that border all this Nigeria, Chad, to prevent these people from coming through? They are not Nigerians. There's no reason why we should be in our country and allow people to wars in and cause confusion. The same thing, people operating in Northeast, most of them are foreigners.
Okay.
And they have been complaints about that.
We'll explore the other options. You said there were about four, but that's what we'll return in just a moment. Join us again. Welcome back. Well, the president having given that directive, pledging more support to the army, asking them to wipe out insurgents. What do we expect next? It may appear straightforward, but it appears it may not be as straightforward as we expect it to be. Well, we're talking to Dr. Izife here. You talked about four basic options, but you've spoken about one of them. What are the other three?
Bad governance. We need. The president talks about putting square pegs into square holes, but from what we're seeing, a lot of incompetence. It's fueling these things because you're putting the wrong people in places where they can work. You had all these spits of violence, the bombing of the train and kidnap of people, and then what has happened in the prison. And has anybody paid the price? No.
What kind of price are you talking about?
You should fire the person responsible because they're not doing their job, just to show that you mean business. When there are no consequence, people just wars on and just do what they think they should be doing. No results. There has to be consequence when people fail. You find somebody who can do the job. And that's the way you can make people know that you're serious.
So where do we place, because, I mean, time was when there was a lot of demand for the service chiefs to change. That happened. How do we place that with what you just said now in terms of consequences?
You don't have to wait for people to clamor for it and you eventually do that.
Okay, they waited, but there was that change.
Yeah,
so
but
does that tick the box where you say people will have to face the consequences of their actions?
I don't think so. Since that time, you've had several episodes.
So should have more changes? To what end? Are we going to keep changing everybody like that?
If that's what you have to do until you get the right person, that's what you have to do. You need to keep making that point that there are consequences. If you can't do your job, I'll find somebody who can. All it takes, yes.
Sorry, I thought you were done with your point. You talked about border operations, and the president also talked about the joint operations with Lake Chad, Niger, and all of that, and how it has been productive and commendable. Do you see the benefit of that in terms of security report, particularly in the northeast states that are bordering these areas? And to follow up with that, what exactly happened to the MNJTF, Multinational Joint Task Operation, tackling insurgency on the borders of Nigeria with these countries?
Well, I don't know that they're operating. I think they had a problem with Nigerian government in the past. I don't think they're operating inside Nigeria. What the president ought to do is to work with the governors of the states bordering these places, so that they can join in this fight. You know, they are on the ground. They can easily dictate somebody who is not a Nigerian. They have their own, vigilante. They can set up vigilantes and all that just to supplement what the federal government is doing. I mean, fighting terrorism is a comprehensive thing. You have to use every available resource. You know, the governors are complaining. Kaduna State governor has talked about going to bomb people in the bush, and then I think there was a governor was talking about having people buy guns. Just because they are frustrated. If the federal government is working with them and people on the ground, and they will better explain to the federal government what needs to be done. But it doesn't seem to be happening. The powers, they have no control over the army or police. Everything comes from Abuja, and there's no way you can fight in a theater without working with the local authorities.
We'll still get the two other points,
yes.
and we've touched on two. The second one was bad governance. We'll touch on two others, but I'd like to still follow up on this trans-border matter, because I think it was one of the major points of the president's speech and the eventual statement, saying that the recent terrorist attacks we've seen in Nigeria bear the hallmark of national and trans-border insurgents trying to cause havoc in Nigeria as well as neighboring countries. And I mean, we can think about the recent attacks, the Kuje attack, the attack perhaps in Owo, which government said was pointing to ISWAP, and some other attacks. We've seen the Kaduna-Abuja train attack and the rest. And I'm just wondering, what is then the grand plan here? If it looks like Nigeria is, for lack of a better term, lucrative for trans-border insurgents, and like they're making an inroad more and more daily, what is at stake here?
It's a lot. Anecdotally, what we hear is that the stories out there that if you want to make money, come to Nigeria and kidnap somebody, and you make money, and people are flooding in from all these neighboring countries, even as far as from Libya. Since he knows that, he needs to redouble effort at the northern borders to make sure that these people are picked up, while they are coming in, and interdicted.
So the thinking out there is that Nigeria is lucrative for insecurity.
That's why else would they be coming here? It's easy. You pick up somebody, you make them, government negotiates with you or some individual and pay you 10 million, 100 million and all that. It's a lot of money.
But this is not an ungoverned space.
Sorry?
This is not an ungoverned space. This is Nigeria. I mean, you talk about Nigeria in the past. You talk about Nigeria's military. I mean, Nigeria used to be the, for lack of a better term, star boy in terms of military might, even helping out other nations. So what could have happened from then till now, such that it will look like it's a free-for-all? We have a military, we have the police, we have, different security agencies.
No, they're not, the boys out there are not motivated, they're not paid well, they're not trained well, they're not equipped with the right, equipment to fight a modern warfare. So, these are the problems. I don't understand why a ragtag group can just face an entire military and just and they'll run. It doesn't make sense. They are not motivated. They are not paid well. They are not well equipped. So it's the problem of the government. They need to train these boys well. They need to equip them. They need to pay them well because they are risking their life.
But whichever way you look at it, there's always another question. You know, the argument has been made about how the government was able to swiftly rein in on non-state actors, i.e. IPOB, i.e. Igboho in the southwestern part of Nigeria. So and at that time, were they ill-equipped? Were they unmotivated? So is the government really helpless in reining in on banditry and insurgency?
I don't think so. My sense is that there are interests that are interested in having this thing go on because they are making money out of it. You know,
we're back at the point of interest. Who are these people that have interests?
Some people in government, some people in business. Benefit, people who supply arms. And then we have a bloated budget, military budget and security budget. What does it translate to?
I'm sorry,
that means,
Dr. Ezefe, we've heard that people in government from time to time, if there's anything I think has been consistent, there are people in government that may be complicit and all of that. And this is something we've heard for years from the government of President Goodluck Jonathan and now this government. So to what end? Who can help us make sense of this? Because you've said it doesn't make sense. And that's something I've heard again from even security experts saying, we're tired. We don't seem to understand. So who can help us make sense of this? Because if there are allegations that, people in government are complicit, you said people in business, who do we turn to make sense of this?
That's the job of National Security Advisor to look into this thing. Look into procurement. See how these budgets are implemented, where the money goes to. That's how you know who is doing this and who is interested in fighting this and who is not.
So what would the other two be for you?
The other two is obviously corruption. Because of corruption, the money that is supposed to go into providing social amenities, don't go there. It goes into private pockets. And, people are there lacking the necessary services. Look at light, for instance. I don't understand why Nigeria, at this point in time, will not have 24-hour light. And it's affecting businesses. It's affecting the ability of people to create jobs. And because of it, the youth are restless. They don't have a job. It harkens back to the last point, which is, abject lack of social mobility opportunity for the youth. And they become easy prey to all these violent groups. If somebody finishes from the university for 10 years, he doesn't have a job. If somebody comes to him with a proposal to go and kidnap somebody or do all these things and get paid well, what option do they have? So that's the fourth one.
Did you get any insight, for instance, from any of your friends within the army who says, look, this is actually what is going on, but we cannot speak, but they just explain to you? Did you get any of your submissions from any one of them?
Well, yes. They can't speak openly about all this stuff because of chain of command issues. So everybody, I think, knows what the issues are. But because of politics, you don't expect them to say it openly. I'm hoping that they voice their, they give the proper advice to those who should do something. Whether or not their report is taken seriously, it's up to the people in charge.
Just for mention, the final one.
No, I said the lack of opportunity.
Lack of opportunity. That's the final.
So it makes it easier for them to be recruited into all these violent groups.
Mark.
Are there those who say, good morning, Mr. Ezefe, there are those who will say that, I know you've spoken about motivation. Some will ask, how much more motivation do we need for our, maybe not motivation, equipment do we need for our armed forces? Because we've seen supply of equipment in recent times, and in some instances, it does seem that they are overwhelmed, and then, these insurgents take over the equipment sometimes. when you consider what the other side has, I mean, these insurgents, when they come in, you have to ask what are they really armed with that our own side doesn't have to be able to take on these people. When you look at, I don't know if you were to compare like for like, would you really say that, equipment is where the problem lies?
Yeah, equipment is not the entire problem. It should worry you when all these ragtag organizations are better equipped than the Nigerian army. It's a cause for concern. To what extent are we using something like drone, for instance, to gather information? These things don't cost a whole lot. We can, all these forests they are talking about, you can put a drone up to go through the forest and pinpoint where these people are. That's how you gather information. These are low-tech and low-expensive things that you can use to gather information. But apparently it's not being used, because otherwise you should be able to see these people. If you have a drone up and circling that place, you'll be able to pinpoint where these people are, so you can move in there and pick them up, or actually send an aircraft there to bomb them. But if you don't have the necessary
in recent times,
sorry
to interrupt you, but
okay.
In recent times, the military have spoken of its successes in the northeast of the country. In fact, those who live in Borno, there's been an attempt to also get people out of the settlement camps and take them to their, ask them to go to their permanent or their former places of origin. That's where they came from before they went to the IDP camps. I'm just wondering, why you think that we did not foresee that while we're doing, clearing out the northeast, the northwest could also be a problem on our hands, which is where we have a lot of the issues now. Katsina, Zamfara, Niger, Kaduna, all of these states are in the northwest of the country. Was it an oversight? Was it, are we facing another threat entirely from that region, or is it people who are going from one end to the other?
Some people have suggested that, Boko Haram have, transmitted to, looking for a way to make money to sponsor what they're doing by kidnapping. So some of them may be Boko Haram, but there are also, people who are doing these things, a crime of opportunity to make money, like the people that come from abroad, from other countries to come in here. So it's a mix, but a government should be able to confront, whatever is within its borders, even if it's happening in 6 geopolitical zones. We have a government. That's your responsibility to protect your citizens. So it doesn't really matter that it's happening in the northeast and northwest at the same time. We should be able to handle both. We have hundreds of thousands of soldiers.
We've seen attempts at the subnational levels to do something, because you've talked about, the fact that state governors could be frustrated. Some of them have asked the citizens to be proactive and get license for weapons. But in some other parts of the country, we've seen attempts by the subnational governments there to set up some security outfit. In the general scheme of things, how effective do you think that should be something that every state in the country should adopt going forward?
Yeah, my sense is the governor is a chief law enforcement officer of a state. You should do everything you have to do to protect your people. You should liaise with the federal government to supplement whatever the federal government is doing. Look at Anambra, for instance, since Soludo came in. You notice what is going on. He is actively fighting what is going there, and gradually peace is returning. So this is what you have to do with state government. There are people on the ground. They understand the terrain. They understand the people. They know who is doing what. So you need to work with them to supplement what the federal government is doing.
Tell us a bit more about what is happening in Anambra State.
Well, it's a combination of the police, the army, and the vigilante. All these town vigilantes. Give them what they need, equipment they need. Let them work in cooperation with the police and the army. And, they're beginning to rout all these criminals that are killing people and kidnapping and doing all this stuff.
All right, we need to go to break. Mark, we'll come back to this, but just to put out there that the Nigerian Air Force, they use drones. They've been to those areas several times. They send us reports of the airstrikes in different areas and base air forests. There was even, I think it was in July last year, Flight Lieutenant Dairo, I think it was. They were on mission in Zamfara skies and the plane was shot down. So they do use those things. So when people hear you say, well, if they have, they should have deployed it, it appears as though it was a blanket statement. But then, yes, they actually do use them. But just to put that out there. But we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, keeping our focus on the president's directive to the armed forces to wipe out insurgents. What should we expect from that comment? We've now been joined by Mr. Ralph Basioge virtually. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Yeah, so give us your understanding of what you think is going on with these insurgents and killings, attacks going on in different parts of the country.
Yeah, I think I've been listening to Dr. Ezefe. He has put everything so succinctly, but there are some aspects I would like to bring into it. And I'm sure you must have seen the video of the late elder statesman, Dr. Maitama Sule, when he said that the Western world actually benefits from dysfunctional and unfunctioning states. And he then said if Nigeria was left to be at peace for 20 years, we will really develop rapidly. So when you then bring that and add it to every other thing that Dr. Ezefe has mentioned, you will then know how gradually we got into this place. But let's look at the actions of the immediate past military regimes that left the military castrated and immobile because of the need to prevent coups and insurgency. And as we speak, you are aware and you should know that the military doesn't have the heavy equipment that Mokwe was alluding to. The military has been stripped of equipment. The ordnance is empty. And so that is why you hear things about, even from the presidency, oh, we budgeted $1 million to go and buy weapons, and it was embezzled. So when did you hear of a military that will wait for money to be given, for weapons to be bought before they can act? So to really put it, drive it home, the truth is that these insurgents, ISWAP, Boko Haram, they have superior weapons. They have heavy weaponry. And I'm sure you must have listened to videos posted by deserting soldiers, Nigerian soldiers, who would say sorry, but they even counted ammunition to give them. And when you engage for 1 hour, your ammunition is finished. What do? Many of them ran into Cameroon and they were arrested. And the next thing we saw was court-martialing of these people. Now, if you want to win a war, the reason why colonial masters were able to colonize us, especially in my place where battles were fought for 6 years between the Benin soldiers and the British Army. The British Army succeeded because of superior firepower and technical know-how. Our soldiers are well trained. We used to be the cynosure of peacekeeping missions in Africa. We know how we took decisive actions in Liberia and Sierra Leone. We are well trained, but it all boils down to the issues that Dr. Ezefe has mentioned. Demoralization, demotivation.
Okay, Mr. Basioge, just before you proceed, when you speak about funds budgeted and embezzled, well, we do know that in April 2018, that fund is approved, $1 billion for military equipment. Is it the same that you say was embezzled? And was there any prosecution? How did you come to that conclusion that it was embezzled? Was it all of it that was embezzled or what?
That is the sad thing. You know, Dr. Isife mentioned the bad consequence management. In motivating people, it should be carrot and stick approach. I'm a human resource management practitioner. When you find people that have acted well, you reward them. When you find those who
I'm
have
trying
not,
to find out,
yes.
you know, which reference, the reports,
No,
the agencies.
the government mentioned it itself. The government mentioned it. Even President Buhari mentioned it in one of his speeches last year with his press. President Jonathan in his public lectures has also mentioned it. You were aware that a plane was seized and impounded in South Africa when Nigeria went to the extent of carrying physical cash, going to buy weapons from South Africa. So and the South African government impounded that money.
Did the same thing happen to the one that this government budgeted for military equipment as well?
Serially, and I would like to quote Mr. President and the Minister of Defense. But again, what has happened is that, how did we get here? The politicians, the effect of politics, the politicians have killed all our institutions, including the military. If you listen to senators, you remember when there was the arguments about padding of budgets. What happens is that even when the defense budget is approved, it is shared amongst politicians. Half of it gets to the military. The military hierarchy looks at what the politicians have done, and what is left goes into their pockets. And the truth is that our soldiers are fighting without adequate weapons. How can an insurgent be carrying AK-57? You know what AK-57 needs? Those heavy AK-47 weapons, okay, with a longer range, with devastating effect, and our soldiers are carrying AK-47s. The insurgents are coming with RPGs, handheld. We even saw in a video, wizards. How did they get these weapons? How did the supplies come in? That goes into the porous borders. And like I said in my last interview with you,
you know, there's been several budget defense and approval by the National Assembly for the army. They appear before them to defend their budgets, and that goes on a yearly basis. The budgets they requested, they approve. So on what basis do you then say that the politicians embezzle those funds that they approve for the army?
I don't want to mention names. I was close to a minister about 2 dispensations ago, and for him to even get his bills approved by the National Assembly, he had to pay the National Assembly. And he mentioned this to me face to face. And it was a sad thing, and that is what is going on. And what I'm saying, Chamberlain, is not strange because the government itself had mentioned it. Buhari himself had mentioned it, that money that was budgeted went into private pockets. So I'm not saying something out of the blue.
Look,
but I look at the borders.
I can't confirm what you've said because I don't have any information whatsoever about who spoke to you or under what circumstance. But are you trying to suggest that they are all saying they are helpless?
It's a complex problem, Chamberlain. Party politics has done Nigeria in, and I don't want to dwell on that. Let's look at the security things. Yes, the way we have practiced our politics is money politics, corruption. Dr. Isife has told you, you can't pretend, Chamberlain, not to know that it is monumental corruption that has led to all the failures we are having in Nigeria. And if it is not checked, Nigeria, look, the US, for instance, if we had a functioning state, the state should be able to question the US when the US ambassador and the US government brought out published statements to say Nigeria is a failing state and Nigeria will collapse. They first of all said it will collapse in 2020. When it didn't collapse, they said 2023. You understand? If we had a good government that can look them eyeball to eyeball, they should have taken them to task to say, yeah, because that statement is pregnant.
The other part of this is that, to me, someone watching and listening to you will think, look, what is it? If they say they're helpless, if they say the monies are embezzled, the monies find their ways into people's pockets, and things can't be done, and it's complex, and all of that, are people supposed to accept that excuse from those who they elected to protect lives and property? Now, if they claim to be helpless, why are they still in office if they can't do anything?
Yes, that is why we have to listen to what Dr. Isife said. Dr. Isife has talked about corruption. Dr. Isife has said about so many things. Look at the borders, for instance. Why are we not proactive to prevent influx of people? But in a dislocated, dysfunctioning economy, where the insurgents are paid better than our soldiers, you will find more recruits amongst unemployed people. But we have the bigger problem right from Nigerian independence. We have the bigger problem of affinity and consanguinity amongst indigenous populations in the north and their brethren across the borders. You can hardly find any family in the bordering states from northwest around Katsina, Kaduna, Sokoto, that don't have relatives in Niger and even Chad. You go to the Kane Borno Empire areas, Borno, Yobe, and the rest. Their brethren are in Adamawa. The Adamawa province in Cameroon is bigger than Adamawa province in Nigeria. And the Adamawa indigenes in Cameroon actually defer to the authority of the Lamido of Adamawa. So that consanguinity and affinity is making that border, it's not the border, even more difficult. But look, I remember the book, the character Don Quixote. When you say the president has ordered that he should go after them, how many times has he made the order? Dr. Esife has alluded to it. So it's just, they are just quixoting. Today, our border presence is only around the Lake Chad region because that is where the multinational task force against Boko Haram is stationed. Yesterday, you watched on TV when AU donated kinetic equipment to them, armored vehicles, and so on and so forth. Now, those armored vehicles, give it 1 year, with what has happened in the past, half of it will end up in the hands of Boko Haram and this one. Because they will attack these soldiers, surprisingly, when they are sleeping, and they will scamper away, and they will take possession of those equipment. So I am not too enthusiastic. Now, once there is a command structure that is serious, and the government that is serious, you will see these things being solved. We are not proactive. For instance, when the Seleka rebels, if you check the mode of dressing of the insurgents in the Northwest, you will find that these are not Nigerian Fulanis.
Permit me to interrupt your thoughts there, Mr. Obasaje. You made reference earlier to a trending video of late elder statesman Maitama Sule saying that Western countries are profiting from dysfunctional governments in Africa. Let's bring it home now to Nigeria, perhaps being an example. Why isn't the government or leaders who are charged with the management of security unwilling accomplices in the dysfunctioning of the systems at home? Perhaps if they are the willing accomplices, and that is where we are, what's the ultimate goal?
See, let me tell you, because I follow world trends, I like Nigerian politics. If you want to see the seriousness of this, go and read Jogaba's book, Diplomatic Social Daring. He mentioned briefly in that book the drama between Dr. Henry Kissinger and Murtala Mohammed of blessed memory, when the Nigerian government, led by Murtala Mohammed, took control of the position of the Organization of African Unity and recognized MPLA, Mouvement Populaire de Libération Angolais, which was led by Dr. Agostino Neto. And Dr. Kissinger flew into Nigeria. When you start doing their diplomacy, you don't know what they discussed. He flew to Nigeria and went to the Down Barracks and trying to give an order to General Murtala Mohammed that he should support Savimbi instead of Agostino Neto. And Murtala Mohammed, in his characteristic manner, according to Jogaba, stood up and walked Kissinger out of his office. And Jogaba said in that book that he was apprehensive when that thing happened. And of course, Murtala Mohammed died. You knew during the coup trials, all the confessions that the coup plotters made, who were the sponsors. So it is not a child's play about what the Western world, led by the US, is doing in Africa. When you have chaos, like the gold and diamond in Zamfara and Elisha, who is buying them? Who is driving? When your institutions don't function, like a Jakarta Steel Mill, like Alaja, like Oku Iboku, like Ascom, aluminium smelting companies, these are turnkey companies. But
Mr. Obasaje, isn't that a convenient way to look at it? Isn't that rather trivial? If you look at neighboring African countries, if you study their own approach in the fight against terrorism, they are seeing results. Why isn't the Western world profiting from the dysfunctioning systems in their own countries?
I don't know the results you are referring to. Are there results in Mali? They just arrested insurgents, Ivorian soldiers, about 3 days ago, who were mercenaries, maybe met. You know that there's no love lost again between the regimes in Burkina Faso and Mali and France. And you know how France has been controlling the resources of the Francophone African countries, who are the majority of the neighboring countries Nigeria has. So it is the same thing, because
you could make reference to Chad.
Yes, Chad has been in civil war since 1963. Are you aware? Through his Enabri, through Bokoni Wadeye, they are still in war. And many of these recruits from Boko Haram and Co. are from there, because boy soldiers at age 9, they're already in the desert training. We take K-47s. So they are veterans. That is why you find that their guerrilla warfare and attacks on the Nigerian army is very devastating. So these are the willing recruits. It is the same story everywhere. And I do not want us to we should not move away from the import of this discourse to not go into the atrocities of the Western world in Africa, making sure that we are developed like it is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why do you think the civil war is still there? Because they are taking all the bauxite, all the minerals. But let's come to Nigeria. When you have an army that is well-trained, they have no equipment, they are demoralized. Like Dr. Esive said, during the recent train attack on the Kaduna-Abuja train, there were security personnel in each coach of that train. And many of them escaped and they made calls. You will now ask yourself, I mentioned it in my last interview, because you have all the military installations in Kaduna, why were the military formations and soldiers not put in on hot pursuit of the insurgents? If something happened 30 minutes ago and you mobilize to pursue them, you will meet them in the bush. There may be 2 or 3 casualties, but if you do that often, they will not do it again. But the train attack happened, and you heard a soldier confessing on video. I don't know whether I watched what they call it, social media, and people are serious with the real media. As soon as it happened, a wounded policeman was like, he had made calls, and that they should, but when they don't get the command to go after in hot pursuit of this insurgent, as soon as the incident is fresh, then what are you talking about? You're talking about compromised command structure. There are moles in the military. You can imagine how would insurgents come into NDA and walk out with officers. It baffles you.
Mr. Basuje, just a minute. I haven't spoken about all the challenges, which is what everybody sees, and they want solutions. So all of these persons who were voted into office, they knew at some point in time that there were problems, there were challenges. They promised they were going there to address them. So it will be untenable for any one of them to keep giving excuses till date as to why they are not able to do what they cannot deliver. So if they can't, there's a simple way. Just step aside and let the next best person do it. There are over 200 million people out in this country who several people can provide solutions. So that said, as we wind down from both of you now, starting with you, Mr. Basuje, could you then give us, from what you've seen, you've identified the problems, what will solutions be for you?
The first thing is getting the right leadership across all the structures. Political leadership, the right one.
How do you mean?
Military leadership, the right one.
You mean another election?
Yeah, very soon, but the immediate one is, first of all, consequence management. You can't be ordering the same people who were not able to act last year, who were not able to act last 2 years. You are not giving them the order over and over again. If you're not able to act, for instance, if you couldn't pursue these insurgents as they were abducted, do you think it is easy to shepherd about 160 people across the forest, shepherding them? It's not easy.
So when you say that they give you all of this information and you analyze and highlight all these challenges, how come that there's no mention whatsoever concerning the security architecture of the country? Because if you don't have a good foundation, how can you deliver?
No, I mentioned in the last interview that our architecture is okay.
Well, here now.
It's okay. Yes, our architecture is okay. It is the people working the architecture. And in the military, it is a hierarchy. It's a command structure. A recruit cannot do otherwise. That was why Fela sang Zombie, Ajoro Jara Ajoro. Go straight, shoot, they will shoot.
Are you restricting
And
the
the
security architecture to only the military?
No, we have various aspects. Even the vigilantes that is information, the community, it's all part of it. Those are the informal security architecture. But the formal ones, from the DSS, from the Civil Defense Corps, to the Navy, to the Air Force, our architecture is first class. When we go for international peacekeeping missions, they respect us. When our police go for peace missions, either to Rwanda or to Lebanon or those, they usually feel they respect us. So it is command structure, the leadership, direction, and so on and so forth.
All right, well, here, let's bring in Dr. Ezefe as we also wind it down on this one. So if you were to proffer solutions, what would they be?
Well, first of all, you try to address those 4 items that I itemized, because the aim is to stop this thing from happening in the first place. But beyond that, in the meantime, we talked about having like a reaction force that will be set in those areas where you have these episodes, so that something happens, publicize the phone numbers, people call that this is going down, and then they'll quickly respond to that place, put a drone up to at least see what is going on. If they did that with the Kaduna train thing and the one that happened at the prison, they should have been able to follow these people and trace them to where they ended up, and then you send the reaction force there to interdict them. That is one thing. And the second thing also, when you're sending these boys to go and fight, you need to have a program in place so that those that sustain serious injuries that will have to leave the army, you have to take care of them. And the ones that die, take care of their families, so that if they're going there to take their risk for you, they know that there's a backup for them. So you need to have things like that so that they will have the heart to go there and fight for you.
Do you put in a reaction force with the present situation in the circumstance? Because, I mean, there are people who still think that they've not seen a lot of them or enough demonstration of willingness to address this matter. And so if you put in an intervention force in the same scenario, wouldn't you get the same kind of results?
We're hoping that the government will take things seriously and then pick a handful of police and army and other paramilitary, train them, bring in people from overseas, Israel, US, some other places, and train them well and set up, just like you have mobile police doing what they're doing, you set up such a thing in the areas where you have problems, Kaduna, northeast, southeast, and some of these places. So, and then have phone numbers you put out in the public, so that once something is going down, people will call, and this is happening here, and then they quickly scramble aircraft, drones, whatever, and then as an advance party to at least pinpoint and see what is going on, and then while the ground forces will move in, that will be their job, just move in there and deal with the situation, in addition to what the rest of the security forces are doing.
Reports abound about how these terrorists are able to gain the trust of the population, offering them soft loans, offering them protection. Why hasn't Nigeria been able to, the government now, record some success in terms of the non-combat approach to tackling insurgency and banditry by deploying the same approach, either in terms of, appealing to the sensibilities of the population such that they do not go the way of the terrorists, or tackling, terrorism using the non-combat approach as well?
Yeah, that's something they're not doing. Like I said earlier, when you have bad governance, you lose the trust of the people. If they had all these social amenities and things in these villages, and why would people go to the terrorists? It's because the terrorists are offering them more than their own government. This is just what it is. The government is not functioning well. So the terrorists come with their offers, which is better than what they're getting from the government. So they switch sides.
Is it, at the end of the day, possible to wipe out terrorism off the face of the earth? Or let me just say, off the face of Nigeria?
That would be an unreasonable thing for anybody to think. As long as you have those factors causing this problem, you continue to have people that will go to the other side. So until you address the underlying factors that breed terrorism and violent crime, it will continue to be part of the scenario. You just have to find a way to respond to it whenever it comes up.
But it's in this statement categorical. It's not as though I'm inferring from it. These are the words: to wipe out terrorists and insurgents off the face of the earth. So is this just the usual messaging for you? I mean, just so people can have something to hold on to and have some hope, or you don't think it's possible?
I think it's, on the part of the president, to be fair to him, it's an aspiration. Doesn't mean that you can accomplish that. It doesn't even make sense to you to think that you can accomplish that, but at least it's something to aspire to.
And if Nigeria needs help, shouldn't it be asking for help? And there's been this conversation about using mercenaries to tackle insurgency and banditry and kidnapping. Is it a possibility? There was some success recorded during the time of former President Goodluck Jonathan with the use of mercenaries.
It's something you can't leave any options off the table. Even in America, they use mercenaries, or they call them contract fighters, because they don't want to use their troops. They have all these contractors that will supply men. They're well paid, and they get the job done. I don't see why Nigeria cannot do it.
Is the body language of this administration showing that it will explore that option?
No, Nigerian government has this thing, I don't know if it's pride, but it's stupid pride. You have to do what you have to do to secure your country. They kind of feel that if you bring in mercenaries or somebody from abroad, that means that they have failed. No, you have not failed. You're exploring all options. So it's something that,
Was there a categorical statement as to the government's position on that?
No, not, none. They used it during, they used it during,
referring to.
They used it during Jonathan, but when the president came in, I think.
So they haven't said that they will not. I know the arguments went back and forth.
The Minister of Defense had said that, we're not thinking.
But we don't know if that's the position of the CNC didn't counter it. So
well, he didn't. I mean,
that's why I asked about body language.
The governor of Borno said that's the way to go, but the minister said, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But there are private contractors, in Nigeria that would say, allow us to even come into the field as well. We have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
We have a lot of manpower that we can bring on board. But it looks like it's not going that way. Is that something we can explore?
Yeah, that's what I recommend in my book. You should explore that. One, you save the lives of your soldiers. Secondly, you're using the best of the best that can go and pinpoint this problem. They have the equipment, they have everything they need. They just go there and take out these people.
Well, the president has given that directive to the army, so people will expect commensurate response from the army. But gentlemen, we have to thank you both for coming on, Dr. Edozie Ezefe and Ralph Obasuje.
Thank you for having us.
All right.